teaching the argument about evolution, because the way I learned it was by reading about the confrontation between Huxley and Wilberforce in London about the origin of species. Actually, it was in Oxford, in the origin of species. Huxley was Wilberforce's opponent. Wilberforce was the Bishop of Oxford. Huxley was Darwin's best friend, the man who coined the term agnostic. They had a great debate, and Huxley mopped the floor with the spokesman of the church. That's how I know how the argument goes. And in America, admittedly, 50 years later, good grief, but still, the same argument happens in Tennessee, in a courtroom this time. And again, they lose. By all means, teach the argument in that way. You just can't teach it in science class. And by the way, if there's going to be equal time for this stuff, then every church that gets any subsidy from the faith-based initiative or any tax break has to teach evolution in Sunday school. By law.
As a fellow anti-theist who is coming to believe more and more that you can't make accommodation with a pack of lies, I decided to give the other side a chance, and at lunchtime I went to a cathedral right near here, and I saw some people who were sitting there, and they found a place where they didn't feel judged. And I saw two nice young men who were going over there the ceremony for them to become priests and serve their community. And I went home and I read a very charming little story about people in a Muslim village hearing the call to prayer, and the high and the low taking off their shoes, bowing their heads, and coming together. And as an anti-theist, I think it's all very well to say this is nonsense what you believe, but what can we do to call the community together? Have you given that some thought?
Sure. Good question. I mean, one of the things that annoys me about the responses that I get sometimes from the faithful is that they say, well, your theory means that love is only a chemical reaction, say. Well, actually, I do think that there is quite a lot of chemical reaction involved in love, and in some of the things that are associated with it too. But it doesn't mean that one is merely a reductionist. I don't think at all that one must despise the transcendent or the numinous. I wouldn't trust anybody who, say, listening to Mozart on a mountaintop in Cascadia at sunset, didn't feel that maybe there was more to life than his own immediate concerns, and that or could be filled with great compassion for other people. In fact, if this were not so, there wouldn't have been great secular men like Thomas Paine, for example, and Benjamin Franklin, who actually did found the American Anti-Slavery Society, while every Christian in the world was justifying slavery from the Bible, where that justification can in fact be found. Of course there is extraordinary and profound humanism, and without it, where would we be? But I deny only that this is not possible without the fear of a supernatural dictatorship, and I will keep repeating that till the last dog dies. I also have a wager that I put to the religious in these cases, and you may be interested to know that I've tried it with everyone from the guy who founded Bush's faith-based initiative, Mr. Olasky, to various Baptist pastors, a Buddhist nun, a rabbi, charismatic Catholic, various pastors on radio and television all up and down the country. Not yet an answer from them. It's simple. You have to name or cite a moral action performed or a moral statement made by a believer that could not have been made by an atheist. That's all you have to do. And it cannot be done. So your question is a nice one, but it's surplus to requirements. Comrade.
One of your anti-God competitors, Sam Harris, makes the point as a primary thesis in his book, The End of Faith, that real responsibility for the situation which you've been describing is the tolerant religious person who will not take a firm stand and put down erroneous liberal principles. I just wondered whether you would put responsibility on the tolerant religious person as Sam Harris does.
Yes, I mean, I'm a very great admirer of Sam Harris, even though he turns out to be a bit of a Buddhist. I mean, unlike me, he is a qualified neuroscientist, and he does think that there can be consciousness independent of the brain. That's an argument I'm very interested in having. I doubt he's going to win, but it's a pleasure to argue with him, I have to say. By the way, what does the Buddhist say to the hot dog vendor? Make me one with everything. Just quickly, what happens next? He gets a slathered hot dog and from beneath his saffron robes produces a $20 bill, hands it to the vendor, munches, nothing occurs. He says, "Where's my change?" You know what's coming. Change comes only from within. I'll give you an example of what I mean and why I think that those who criticize me for only taking religion at its worst say, well, you're right about the fundamentalists and the extremists, but what about the mainstream? I say this. Remember last year, the Danish case, where a huge organized attempt was made to destroy the economy of a small democracy in Northern Europe, Denmark, because its prime minister refused to break his own law, the law of his country, to censor cartoons in an afternoon newspaper in Copenhagen. With the backing of all the members of the Arab League, a boycott was declared on Denmark to try and sabotage its economy. Its embassies were burned, its diplomatic immunity was violated in countries where demonstrations are not normally allowed. Random Scandinavians, whether Danish or not, were set upon and murdered. There was a huge outpouring of mayhem and cruelty and bigotry that had quite clearly been very well rehearsed in advance. Bad enough, you might think. Not one media outlet in this country would agree to show those cartoons. In a time completely dominated by the image, my profession, I mean, totally dominated by images, much too much so, they wouldn't show, here's the picture or the pictures that all the fuss is about. Nor would they show them as a gesture of solidarity to their Danish colleagues who were being subjected not to threats of death, but attempts actually to kill them. And when a small magazine, and I know very well why this was, because I know the editors who took the decision, they were either extremely afraid of violent reprisal if they did their job, or, coming closer to your point, they were afraid of offending religious people. I'm not sure which of those decisions is the most cowardly or contemptible. Taken in conjunction, I think extremely contemptible. And a small atheist magazine for which I write, called Free Inquiry, did reprint the cartoons, as a result of which Borders Bookstore pulled our small magazine from the rack. As a result of which I haven't spoken in a Borders Bookstore since I started this tour. Now, in other words, in the heartland of free expression and constitutionally protected free speech, a complete, across-the-board capitulation by everybody and a discrimination against those who were willing to stand up against it. This is very severe. What did the Pope say? Seeing Danes being threatened, Danish economy sabotaged, Danish embassies burned, what did he condemn? The cartoons for being profane. That was the line of the Vatican. That's what our State Department said. It said it regretted the offense given by the cartoons. This is a fantastic surrender. It means the extremists have the whip hand, and we've got no right to say that in criticizing religion, we're only singling out the fanatical or fundamentalist majority. No, in the name of tolerance, you're identified for it. In the name of multiculturalism, in the name of respect, in the name of all these things, they were parodied. And an abject collapse in the face of religious fascism occurred that I, for one, am not going to forget or allow to be repeated. Muted applause for that. Oh, thank you. Not to nudge you too hard in the roast. If people don't applaud, I can become quite morose. Hurt, you know. Not upset, just hurt. Sir.
So over the course of history, what happened or what is in place that enables